return to the woods of my childhood, and fear lurks in the cicada song. Every year during summer vacation, my parents sent me to stay with my grandparents in southeastern Missouri. You may not think that a kid born and raised in Pasadena, California, would find any enjoyment in that part of the country, but those summers were paradise for me. My father grew up in Washington State, and my mother was a small-town girl from Grayford, Missouri, where my grandparents owned a small house in the woods outside town limits. They both grew up playing in the woods as children, and thought that their only son should have that same chance to explore and wander that they did. With not many options for that in LA County, I got to live with my grandparents for the first half of summer vacation. Those sweaty, humid days spent running through the verdant woods, fishing in the small creek bordering my grandparents' property, and building forts while defending them from all manner of imagined enemies shaped my entire childhood. My grandparents gave me almost complete freedom after my chores were done. After completing simple tasks around the house, I was free to run and jump and swim and climb the rest of the day, until I heard the first cicadas of evening begin their screeching. That was one of the only hard rules my grandparents had. Come home as soon as you hear the first cicadas in the evening, stay in the house after dark. And if they got too loud, I could turn on my TV for some background noise, but I always needed to stay in my room after bedtime. The alarm clock sound would ring out every day around dusk, signaling it was time to return home, and I always tried to see how fast I could make it back before the sounds became so loud I couldn't think. It was more of a game than anything else. A man versus nature battle of speed against sound. I almost always won. I would run inside and flop down on the couch panting as Grandpa locked the door, and Grandma drew the frilly floral curtains closed over the windows. After dinner, we'd watch a movie and I'd help with the dishes. Then I would go off to bed. Only a few times did I have to turn the TV on because of the sound. One of these nights on the way to the TV, I heard Grandpa walking out of his room and down the stairs. At breakfast, he seemed a lot more tired than usual, and he yelled at Grandma, something I'd never seen him do before, nor since. I guess that's why it stuck with me all these years. When you're a kid, nothing scares you more than a loved one acting so out of character in a frightening manner. A year or so later, I was trying to describe to my friends at school my routine in Missouri. All of the kids I knew were very much products of their environment. They thought I was a full-blown redneck, since I spent my summers in the South, despite my father owning a talent agency in Los Angeles, and our house in Eaton Canyon paid for by my mother's modeling career. They didn't even know what a cicada sounded like. I pulled up a video to show them one time. As it played, I grew puzzled and chose a different video. As the confusion in me grew, I played video after video of cicada sounds. None of those sounds were what I'd grown up hearing. The next May, I paid extra attention to the song. Everything about it was wrong. It sounded like a person's imitation of a cicada, but dozens of them simultaneously from the trees. When I asked my grandparents about it, they just brushed it off as a different species than the one in the videos I watched during that previous fall. With a childlike naivety, I accepted that answer at the time. Over the course of that summer, I grew more and more accustomed to the sound until it was no longer a source of fear for me. By the end of June, it was business as usual as far as I was concerned. Around mid-July, our part of the country was due for a meteor shower. It was touted on the news as this huge, once-in-a-lifetime astronomical event. I begged my grandparents to let me go out to watch it. I told them about this large rock I'd found out in the woods that would make a perfect seat for this celestial dance. I told them that I would get all of my chores done early, so I could take a long nap and hike out around sunset to my rock, and I could even be back before morning. I begged and pleaded, but they refused, saying that it was way too dangerous for my 13-year-old self to be so far out in the woods at night. It was hard not to reason with their logic, but I was a bit rebellious back then, so I resolved to sneak out after they went to sleep and be back before they awoke. Besides, my friends snuck out all the time, I rationalized, and I wasn't going to party or drink or anything like that. So the night of the shower, I packed a flashlight, blanket, and some snacks, and waited for the sounds of my grandparents' nightly routine to begin. After I heard their door close, I waited for another half hour or so. When I decided enough time had passed, I slipped out through my window. I remember thinking, good thing the cicadas are so close tonight. This noise will cover any sound I make. I had some difficulty navigating the woods in the dark. I knew this area like the back of my hand, and the rock I was setting out for was my favorite castle. As it was constantly under siege, I knew all of the secret paths to get there, but I hadn't planned on how dark it would be in the tree line at night. Even though the sky was clear, there was no moon. That was supposed to make the meteor shower even more spectacular, but the tree canopy blocked out all starlight and my weak flashlight cut a thin line in the sable curtain. A second factor I hadn't considered was the noise. The cicada song pressed in around me with disorienting volume. I would pass through areas where the defending screech was enough to be frightening. Then it would fade as though I had passed the large colony nestling in those trees, and it would be quieter for a bit before raising in volume. But it was always present. I kept passing these colonies, but a small thought crept unwelcome into my mind. What if this is the same spot? What if I'm completely turned around and passing the same trees? I started looking around me, desperately searching for a familiar landmark. My flashlight was plundered from my grandparents' kitchen, and its small bulb was next to nothing compared to modern LED lights. It barely illuminated the closest trees around me. That was enough to see something that would send me into a full-blown panic. It was an arm, a human arm with the hand gripping the tree it was on. It was broken off somewhere near the elbow and it shined slightly in the dim glow. I choked back a sob as I froze. Slowly, morbid fascination took over and I crept towards it. When I got close enough, the fear hit me like a dizzying wave of nausea. It wasn't an arm, it was hollow. Like it had been an arm, but everything but the skin was sucked out. No, not skin. It was translucent. A brown-tinged carapace in the shape of a human arm, grabbing onto the tree with the same force as the horror gripping my chest. I ran. I didn't know which was the house was, I didn't know where I was. I just knew I needed to not be here. Sticks and sharp leaves tore at my face and arms as I plunged through the pitch darkness. Roots and rocks reached up to trip me. I stumbled many times, but somehow kept my feet as I tore away from that tree, away from the arm thing, away from the cicadas' keening song. The low branch came out of nowhere. My head slammed into it so forcefully, I struggled to keep conscious for a moment as I laid on the fallen leaves. As the ringing in my ears faded away, it was replaced by the eerie nail-on chalkboard rasp of the cicadas. My flashlight was a few feet away, and as I grabbed it, the beam flashed upwards, just long enough for something to catch my eye. As I looked up into the canopy, a despair and terror that I've never known since, except when I wake up screaming in the night, fell upon me. In the watered-down glow, I saw all of them. People. They were all naked, in the tops of the trees, clasping the trunk or branches with all four limbs, some hanging on each other, some facing away, some towards me, staring down into my pale, tear-streaked face. Their mouths were bared. The screeching was coming from them. There were dozens of them, making that deafening, grating song that never wavered. None of them moved a single muscle, not even to blink as my flashlight passed over their slightly shining forms. They just clung, watching me, singing. Pain lanced through my head as I clumsily got to my feet. I turned and ran, praying that they would not give chase. Dodging trees, I finally caught a glimpse of the house and tore in that direction. My breath caught in my throat as I saw a silhouette on the roof, two more on the trellis, but I couldn't stop. They didn't budge as I clambered up the side of the house and dove into my bedroom window. I slammed it behind me and trembled as the ever-present sound lasted until morning. I must have dozed off because suddenly the sun was peering through the gap in my curtains and my grandparents were busy making breakfast. I came downstairs and tried to cover the scratches, cover my face and limbs. They never asked me if I went out that night, but I know they knew. I never went back to their house, and they never pushed the issue. My parents asked me why, and I just told them I missed my friends in California all summer, and they stopped questioning me. I never planned on going back there again. But last week, my grandma and grandpa passed away in a car accident, and the funeral is being held out there, and my parents and I are staying in their house all summer. I don't think they know what's out in those woods, but I do now, and I'm not sure how I'll react when I hear the cicada song again.